Welcome, everybody. I'm Mike Schachter, president of the Carolina Nature Coalition. Oh, my. Wait a second. There we go. I'm going to do what young people do. I forgot, and I didn't bring the mission statement with me, but I have it on my phone. And so young people read from their phones now. So, Carolina Nature Coalition is a community organization based in New Bern, North Carolina, whose mission is to raise public awareness of environmental issues and environmental justice issues by engaging citizens in meaningful community action. And I would like to thank especially the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in New Bern for providing this venue here for us to do this, that we can both sit in comfort and also people can sit at home in comfort and look at it on their Zoom. I want to thank Tom Shoup for being our technical person. And I want to thank Connie Casey for providing some of the goodies. I want to thank my wife, Melissa, also for providing some of the goodies. All right. The Carolina Nature Coalition only exists by donations by people who want to help us continue. We don't get any grants or get money from any great financial institutions. So only the people that like what we're doing keep us going. And they have for the last, last 13, 14 years. So thank you all. Our speaker, Bri Hoffman, completed a Bachelor of Liberal Arts degree in biology at Washington Jefferson College, located in Washington, Pennsylvania, which I learned is near Pittsburgh. This is where she also found her passion for conservation-based research. She is now the current project manager for the Crystal Skipper Butterfly Project, which is a joint venture between the North Carolina Aquariums and the North Carolina State University. Prior to joining the Crystal Skipper crew, Bri spent 4 years working as the project supervisor, endangered and endemic St. Francis Satyr butterfly, Satyr? St. Francis Satyr butterfly, which is only found within the confines of the Fort Bragg Military Installation. So that's very rare. She values our natural world and feels that it is imperative that ecologists engage in both research and outreach to make research accessible to all. And this is what she's doing here. So now, welcome, Bri.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Mike, and thank you all for taking the time to be here with me this evening. I am very excited to share some information about the crystal skipper and some other rare and unique species with you all. So some of you may be wondering, what is an endemic species? An endemic species is a native organism that exists in a very specific geographic location, and it cannot be found anywhere else beyond what we know the range is. The importance of endemic species cannot be understated. Since it is currently thought that endemic species evolved to fulfill specific needs, in highly localized environments, then it is reasonable to say that endemic species are necessary in maintaining ecosystem biodiversity. Furthermore, the limited range of an endemic species naturally leads to fewer individuals on a global scale. So even if a population is considered to be stable, if a climatic event or something occurs, it is more likely that these endemic species will be lost before a more widespread or more generalist species. And the state of North Carolina is currently home to 2 endemic butterflies. On the left is the St. Francis satyr, a wetland-dependent butterfly that is only found in about a 3-mile radius within the confines of the Fort Bragg Military Base, and that is in the Sandhills region of the state. On the right is the crystal skipper, a small butterfly that is only known to inhabit about 30 miles of barrier islands off of the coast of North Carolina. And so today I will be focusing on the crystal skipper. I want to share with you all some of the natural history and current research related to the butterfly. And so to start, I think we should first talk about the people who paved the way for the skipper to become recognized as a species. The first observations of the skipper were in 1978 by Eric Kienzer. However, it took a few years for further research to actually begin. This is when Nick Haddad and Ellison Leidner conducted a variety of surveys for crystal skipper populations along the Crystal Coast. Leidner and Haddad's research eventually paved the path for species recognition, which was headed by John M. Burns in 2015. And so now that we know a little bit more about what helped the skipper earn its name, let's talk about where exactly can we find it and a little bit more about its appearance. As I mentioned, the skipper is endemic to the Crystal Coast of North Carolina. Populations are known to exist from Bear Island, which is part of Hammock's Beach State Park, throughout the entirety of the Bogue Banks, from Emerald Isle all the way to Fort Macon, with the easternmost population existing at the Rachel Carson Reserve. To the unknowing eye, this tiny butterfly can be considered sort of nondescript. If you've spent time at any of these locations, then there's a chance you may have observed a crystal skipper without even knowing it. The most noticeable characteristics of the crystal skipper are the white markings on both the fore and hind wings. These features led to the common name of crystal in crystal skipper, not only due to the location of the butterfly, but also due to the shiny gem-like white scales. The crystal skipper utilizes seaside little bluestem as a host plant. This native dune grass is plentiful throughout the primary and secondary dunes of the Crystal Coast. Female skippers will seek seaside little bluestem for egg laying, and the larvae will feed on the plant throughout its immature life stages. In their adult form, though, male and female crystal skippers can be tricky to identify. Here we see some photos of both sexes, and as you can see on the flat stacked images, the differences are not super immediate. So male skippers tend to be more angular in their wing shape and are slightly darker than females, while females have a rounder forewing, a larger abdomen, and frosting on both the fore and hind wings. The second image is a mating pair of skippers, and we can tell that the skipper on the right is most likely a female due to the larger abdomen and that whitish wing frosting. However, it may not be as obvious when we are surveying these in the wild. A little bit more about their life cycle. Crystal skippers are considered to be bivoltine. This means that 2 generations of butterflies will occur each year. In the spring, larvae from the previous year will pupate and emerge as adults. Those adults will find each other, mate, lay eggs, and thus bring about a second generation of butterflies in the late summer. These adults will once again mate, lay eggs, and those larvae will overwinter to become the first butterflies the following spring. But you may be curious as to what life may look like from egg to adult for a crystal skipper. And so we begin with the egg stage. Currently, we recognize 4 egg stages, egg 0 through egg 3. And egg 0 tends to be greenish when we first see them. Egg 1 is uniformly tan. Egg 2 has a reddish kind of belt wrapped around it, and at egg 3 you can actually see the head cap, which the larva will use to break through the exterior of the egg to emerge and begin eating. Next, the caterpillars, while all still voraciously feeding on seaside little bluestem, will continue to grow, and their bodies will become a darker orange. And this is what we would consider to be a third instar larva. Fourth instar larva will be even larger, almost swollen in appearance, and the body will appear to be pinkish with a darkening head cap, while the fifth instar is marked by more growth, deepening pink coloration, and a distinctly brown head cap. The final instar, instar 6, appears to be really large and will continue to further darken in color. But a key indicator of an instar 6 larva is the visible dorsa aorta. The dorsal aorta is a fancy term for the heart of the caterpillar, and you can actually see the hearts pumping through an instar 6 larva. This is not just unique to the crystal skipper. Many Lepidoptera larvae actually have this visible aorta pumping right before they begin their pupation process. And so once larvae reach their 6th instar, they will undergo a final transformation into their chrysalis. It's during this transformation that the pupa will rearrange their cellular makeup and eclose or emerge as an adult butterfly. And while the adult lifespan of a crystal skipper may be anywhere from 9 to 14 days, unfortunately, it is never guaranteed that crystal skippers will survive in the wild. And so in areas with a higher density of crystal skippers, or more individuals, other arthropods may prey upon them as a food source. In the photo on the left, we can see a southern black widow spider feeding on an adult skipper. Similarly, on the right, a robber fly has captured a skipper for a mid-flight meal. These interactions are normal in the wild and satisfy the nutritional needs of other animals. Currently, we have not identified any concerns for the crystal skipper serving as a food source for other arthropods due to the assumed stability of the population. However, a more severe threat to the crystal skipper population is based on human-induced or anthropogenic influences. For example, introduced wildlife can severely alter ecosystems. The horses at Rachel Carson Reserve, pictured on the left, were thought to be introduced to the island sometime around the 1940s or 50s. Since their introduction, they have disturbed the environment on the island by means of grazing and trampling, and one of their absolute favorite snacks happens to be seaside little bluestem. So areas that may have once been suitable habitat for the crystal skipper are no longer available to them due to the increased grazing, and this leaves fewer available spots for crystal skippers to mate and reproduce and continue their life cycle. And while the horses are one example of introduced wildlife as a result of humans, there's also a concern for continued development of land. This is especially important given that the crystal skipper inhabits areas that humans consider to be high-demand living and recreation destinations. Prior to protections being enacted to reduce dune disturbance, many homes, hotels, and businesses were built upon leveled land along shorelines. While we all appreciate the ocean view, it is worth considering the impact that this has had on the creatures that inhabit these dune ecosystems. And furthermore, highly developed areas along the shore, without the protection of primary or secondary dunes, are at an increased risk of damage from extreme weather events, such as hurricanes and tropical storms. As our climate continues to change, we will continue to experience more frequent and extreme weather events, an increase in high temperature days, and rising sea levels. All of these outcomes could have a negative effect on the crystal skipper population. But we are working on ways to monitor the crystal skipper and to learn more about the distribution, life cycle, and habitat of this unique creature. Currently, NC State University and the North Carolina Aquariums have partnered on a grant to support researching the crystal skipper. Part of this research is led by graduate student Laura Taylor, a member of Elsa Youngstedt's lab at NC State. Additional NC State principal investigators include Nathan Hostetter and Dave Johnston. And on the NC Aquarium side of things, Carol Price serves as the principal investigator. Together, we, along with 4 additional crew members, are implementing survey methods to monitor the skipper population, assess the habitat, and document survival and life cycle components. Additionally, we are developing and participating in outreach and to promote community awareness of the skipper. And so I think it's important to share with you all a bit about how we conduct research and collect data pertaining to the crystal skipper. In the following slides, I will do my best to give you all a brief overview of what a day in the life of a crystal skipper crew member is like. But if you have any questions or clarifications, we'll save those until the end, and I'm happy to answer. So we'll start with population surveys, and these help us determine an approximate number of individuals in a single site. This method is repeated at many sites over a given number of days for a given number of years to help determine an overall population. So we use 2 types of sampling, and it is conducted at randomly selected transects that are located from Bear Island all the way to the easternmost location at Rachel Carson Reserve. Count-based surveys are conducted by 2 individuals at any given transect, and we walk from one end very slowly, 250 meters down to the other end. This is a timed survey, and so during this time, we will look around and independently count the number of crystal skippers that we see. And so once we have recorded our observations, the 2 partners will compare their observations, and in some events, myself and whoever I'm surveying with may have seen a butterfly at the same time, kind of in the same place, kind of going the same direction. And so that is one individual butterfly that we both happen to see. However, there are other times where your butterflies you won't see the same. And so you take the shared sightings and independent sightings, and those will give you a total unique butterfly count. This is also known as a double observation survey. We also conduct mark recapture surveys, which are a crew favorite. So mark recapture surveys can be conducted in pairs or individually, with each person contributing at least 45 minutes of effort. So that is total time catching, marking, and recording data. We will walk along the transects And once butterflies are captured, we remove them and use a pair of calipers, which is a measurement tool, to determine the size of the butterfly from the head to the wingtip, and we will look at scale loss and wing wear. So how see-through is the butterfly is kind of how we do scale loss on a 0 to 100 scale, and wing margin loss or wear is how much of that wing is still on the butterfly. We will also do our best to determine the sex of a butterfly that we catch, but it's tough when you're in the field looking at it, but we do our best. And lastly, and I think the coolest part, is you get to write on the butterfly with a marker with a unique alphanumeric code. And so some may say our job is a butterfly tattoo artist. So when we aren't chasing butterflies, we are typically using a square meter quadrat to evaluate the habitat and search for eggs and larvae. So the square meter is placed at predetermined locations along our 250 meter transects, and within that square we identify the plants within it, any additional substrates or materials, and we will also go through the seaside little blue stem within the quadrat and search for eggs and larvae. And once we find those eggs and larvae, we may set up a demography cage. And so the demography cages help us understand the reproduction, survival, and life cycle of the crystal skipper. And in some instances, we do find eggs and place cages, but in other instances, we will capture a gravid female, which is just a female that we really hope is full of eggs that are viable. And we will have the butterfly in the cage for about 24 hours in the hopes that she lays some eggs, and then the female butterfly is released after. Once we have eggs within a cage, we monitor them daily to every other day throughout the duration of the field season, trying to document as much of the life cycle as we possibly can, which occurs from March through August, and then as frequently as possible from August through February. At some point, the caterpillars do just kind of disappear for a little bit, so we're trying to figure out where do we go and how do we find them. And while we are still entering and checking and cleaning data, we do have a preview of what we've gleaned so far from 2024 data. And this suggests that some of our protective sites have a greater abundance of butterflies. And this very initial preliminary result supports the idea that sites that have lower disturbance are more likely to support a greater abundance of butterflies compared to areas that might have a greater potential for disturbance and habitat degradation. And based on our current observations, we feel that the crystal skipper population is stable. We have also found that continued demography surveys and studies have yielded new information regarding larval stages of the crystal skipper. However, it is evident that further data collection will be needed to determine species-specific needs and some best management practices. And again, when we're not in the field, we can be found throughout the community promoting educational and volunteer opportunities. These events are a great way to share information about the crystal skipper and the coastal dune ecosystem with the public. And we have also been very fortunate to have the opportunity to train people to volunteer with us and come out and survey and kind of experience this rare butterfly in their own way. And so now that you've learned a little bit more about what our day looks like with the crystal skipper, you might be interested in learning more about what you can do to help and support the skipper. The most vital and important aspect of survival for any species is habitat availability. Sand dunes are highly susceptible to erosion, and caterpillars are really fragile. It is important that we encourage people to stay off the dunes and to be mindful when walking in areas with dense vegetation. Moreover, you can promote further conservation of sand dunes by focusing on native plants that assist with dune stabilization. While you may not have a sand dune in your own yard, there are community events that include public plantings of stabilizing plants throughout the public trust lands along the entire North Carolina coast. Additionally, at home, you can plant nectar sources for pollinators. Human development has made it more difficult and treacherous for pollinators to access nectar sources, but by planting native sources, you are providing an opportunity for a pollinator to stop for a snack along their way. Even a single potted plant can make a difference, and as the saying goes, if you plant them, they will come. And here are some other native pollinator species in North Carolina, which includes the eastern tiger swallowtail, the Cecropia moth, the carpenter bee, hummingbird moth, and the longhorn flower beetle. And again, if you are interested in planting native nectar sources, the North Carolina Wildlife Federation has a list of native coastal pollinator plants, which you can access using the QR code on the screen. Here are my thank yous and sources. And this is our field crew. Any questions?
And before you, if you have a question, please wait until the mic comes to you so that the people on Zoom can also hear you. And I knew that was a question coming from this young man.
So I noticed on your map that Shackelford Banks doesn't have any crystal skippers. You think that's mainly because of the high density of horses there?
I actually do not know. I think there is a possibility that the crystal skipper is on Shackelford Banks. However, we have not yet had the opportunity to get there to do some investigating of our own. I know in the time that Nick Haddad and Allison Leidner were doing their work with the skipper, Allison had set up exclosures on Shackelford to prevent horses from grazing. And so I think it is likely that if those exclosures are still standing, then there is available habitat that's been hopefully well preserved.
Has anyone done a survey of the blue stem, the little blue stem on the island?
Not yet. We're getting there.
Okay.
Could you put the QR code back?
Wait.
It's not a question, is it?
I can't even hear you.
Could you put the QR code back so we can get the native plants if we want to plant them?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. What areas or city do you concentrate to see this butterfly?
What areas?
Yeah, in the city where they're located, you know.
Can you repeat the question louder?
What area, city, you know, I know it's in New Bern in a certain area that you can see the butterflies.
Oh, it's so Atlantic Beach is a good place to see them. Fort Macon. If you walk on the Elliott Coos Nature Trail, then you're likely to see them. Probably not right now. Their flight period has just ended, but next spring. Mark your calendar.
How big are the butterflies and how big are the caterpillars? I mean,
So-
inches, what?
So the butterflies are about the size of a quarter. They're not very big. I know the photos make them seem a lot bigger. The caterpillars range in size, so the smallest caterpillar would be instar 1. It is about the size of a grain of rice. So you're looking for a green grain of rice on a green plant, and it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. They get slightly larger to about 2 inches, maybe in their 6th instar. But yes, it is hard to find them for the first few instars of their life.
You say you ride on the butterflies?
We do.
And when you do you recapture some of them so you can figure out the population size? I'm a
Yes.
statistician.
Yes, so the beauty of mark recapture is that it is a plethora of information just from the simple act of catching, writing, releasing. And as we continue to visit these transects and perform mark recapture, if you recapture X number of butterflies, it can tell you a lot about how big that population is. So the more you recapture and the less that you are marking, probably indicates that your population is a little bit smaller. Whereas if you are only recapturing some, but you continue to mark fresh butterflies every time you are there, your population is probably a little bit bigger. And in some cases, you will recapture a butterfly on a completely different transect, and that can tell you a little bit more about their dispersal, which is interesting. Like, how far can they fly? For how long?
Okay, I have more questions. Can you tell us about that other butterfly at Fort Bragg?
I can. So, I worked with the St. Francis Satyr for 5 years now. And it is very rare. And it's one of the only arthropods listed as endangered. That is not something that happens for bugs at the federal level. They usually kind of just get like, oh, what are we gonna do? And so the St. Francis Satyr is wetland dependent and fire dependent. So the wetlands it inhabits are in the impact areas of Fort Bragg. So the areas where they're firing artillery, because this mimics the natural fire regime that was once in that area before humans humaned it. And because of that, they are a little bit harder to find. And for a while, we were doing a captive rearing and breeding program to kind of supplement those populations. So you grab as many butterflies as you can, you raise them we used a greenhouse setting, so it was very highly controlled. And then we would release those into the known sites. But unfortunately, the St. Francis Satyr has not been regularly observed in 3 years. So we've only seen one in the past 3 years.
During your mark recapture studies, what's the longest dispersal record you've had?
I want to say, probably 10 miles? No.
So if they move, so they'll move several miles.
They can move miles.
Okay.
They can move miles. But, yeah, they can move miles.
Okay. Have ever any been found on one island, marked on one island, and found on another island?
No. But I wouldn't say that it's impossible. If the tide is low enough, I feel like that makes it a little bit easier to get across. Yeah, maybe they ride the wind. I don't know.
Is the blue stem grass a salt tolerant or not salt tolerant? What I'm getting at is I know they plant sea oats on the dunes, which are salt tolerant. So are these two different habitats that you wouldn't have blue stem in a sea oats environment?
So we have found that sea oats and bluestem are pretty intermixed in the crystal skipper sites, which suggests that the little bluestem is salt tolerant, and I think that helps it survive, especially when water comes up and over the dunes. We haven't seen a huge dieback yet, but it does drown caterpillars.
So what I wanted to find out was, I know that when they have overwash and dune rehabilitation, as far as I know, they exclusively use sea oats to re-energize the dunes with flora. Or, yeah, and so maybe the blue stem grass should be included in dune stabilization?
I
Do you
think
know
so.
if that occurs?
I think so. If the consistency of little bluestem and sea oats is, if we find that it is necessary for the crystal skipper, then I don't see any harm in adding little bluestem to the mix. But it is not something commonly grown by nurseries that are providing the sea oats for plantings. I know we've had a little bit of difficulty finding someone who grows like pallets of seaside little bluestem.
So both of these butterflies prefer the grass. They don't go feed on any flowers.
No, the crystal skipper does nectar on morning glories as an adult. And that's during the second flight period, so it's really, really hot and not much else is blooming in the dunes at that point. So they do need something to help keep them going. And the St. Francis Satyr has not been observed nectaring ever. So
Yeah, I was wondering if there's anyone, since the little blue stem is so important for the larval growth, has anyone done a survey of the distribution of that plant on any of these islands?
So we are looking, by doing the quadrat along our transects, that is able to be extrapolated over the entirety of the known range for the crystal skipper, and hopefully we will be able to determine the density of seaside little bluestem and also compare that to the abundances of the crystal skippers. So areas with high seaside little bluestem, how many skippers are hanging out there compared to areas that have more sparse or no seaside little bluestem.
Are there any particular areas that have a lot of little blue stem, seaside blue stem?
Fort Macon. Fort Macon has plentiful bluestem. It is prime skipper real estate.
Would you find the most there as opposed to, let's say, Bear Island?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Bear Island does have a lot of seaside little bluestem and a good number of skippers. The island is just a little bit harder for us to traverse and survey regularly because we have to take the boat there, and the rangers are very, very kind in providing rides for us, but it's a bit of a time
It's a
crunch.
logistics issue.
Yeah.
Ralph, is this something that the Sierra Club might be interested in?
I suppose. I don't know if there's any, well, in general, yes. So Sea Club's always interested in conservation issues. I don't know if there's any problems at the moment with development
No,
that could threaten them.
no.
Are they listed, what's their list? They're not federally listed.
They are not federally listed. They are not state listed
Okay.
either. So they are a rare species due to the very limited geographic location of them, but their populations are stable right now.
Okay.
So we think, based on,
Any theory as to why they're only found on those three islands?
I do know that there are a handful of closely related skipper species, and those actually extend to Florida. And so I think that some sort of speciation occurred due to either an event or geographic barriers that came up, and something split the lineage along the
Okay.
way, and they never found their way back.
So maybe they're bad dispersers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if there are no more questions, I want to thank
Thank
Bri.
you.
This has been very, very interesting. So thank you very much. I appreciate this.
I will give you-
And so I just want to remind people that if you're interested in this presentation, it will be on our website in the future, near future. So if you know people that could not come here today, tell them to go to our website and check after a while, and it will be rebroadcast there. And it's on YouTube, right? It will also be on YouTube in the future. Once again, we only exist because of donations, and there is a donation. If you're here, there is a donation bucket on the table. But if you're on Zoom, you can go to our website, and there is a donation button. So I would thank you. And the next presentation, it will be on green burials. Not to say anything about the age of most of our people that come to this thing here, but I think this would be a very interesting presentation, and it's going to be, I think, on September 30th. But if you signed up, you will definitely receive information on it. So thank you all, and have a good evening.